Welcome back to Winning Indeed. Amy, let's talk about the overall process of an SSI claim and what SSI applicants need to know.
Certainly. As you had discussed, initially, at first it's the initial stage, which can take about 3 to 6 months for SSA to process. That's what they say on their website. I will generally say once in a while it can be much less than that. Those are usually more the compassionate care allowance cases where most of those people have like end-stage renal disease or something that's on the compassionate care allowance list. So it's like fast passed at Disney World. So it goes really fast and they get approved. Those are rare.
More than
yeah, exactly. So even though SSA, I rarely see cases even at initial that take that long. I would say sometimes they're a year and a half. And so the reality is sometimes people get so overwhelmed at the fact that they don't have a decision. They get very upset and depressed and frustrated. But as you said, we don't have control over that unless there's some ways that they meet criteria to have it expedited, which is possible, but rare. So if that's not one of the things, you just have to wait for your decision. During that time, continue getting medical treatment, talking to your doctors openly and honestly, making sure they understand your conditions, take medications, write down information you have about any side effects to the medications. And if you get denied, appeal within that time frame. The next stage is the request for reconsideration, like we talked about. That's all paperwork as well. Can take a little bit around the same time, no specific time frame. The next stage, as you said, is in front of the hearing, it's in front of an administrative law judge. And as you said, that is most of the time, if someone hasn't gotten an attorney, if they may want one, it's really crucial because the attorney has so many things to look for, like making sure all the medical records and non-medical records are up to date, having all of those reviewed, possibly doing a pre-hearing brief, going over the types of things that will be asked of you, of the claimant, the client, and possibly any other witnesses, talking to the judge, having potentially opening, closing statements, potentially expert witnesses that they will have, such as a vocational expert, such as a medical expert, being able to cross-examine them based on the medical records. So there's so much that attorneys do, and there's so much that happens at a hearing, making sure that person is informed, comfortable, and ready for that process, because sometimes just not knowing what's going to happen can be overwhelming, especially with a health condition, pain, fatigue, whatever's going on. And it helps to put the person at ease. If the decision comes back at the hearing, it's fully favorable, then it's wonderful. The person has been approved. Now remember, for SSI, they still have the non-medical basis. So if they're approved, they'll then, after the fully favorable decision at the hearing level, or if it's earlier, they'll get a notice of award. And if it's for SSI, they still have an interview with SSA. It's pretty brief though, for the most part, but it depends. And they'll go over income, assets, and resources. They'll also ask about other people that live in the house. They'll ask about your living situation, including if you pay rent or not, if you live in someone's home. So it'll be a full basis of questions, and it's all done by phone. They will either, this is a newer thing over the last few years, they'll either put that in your notice of award letter or after you get your fully favorable decision, if you receive one, and it'll have a date and time. Now, they haven't asked you first if that's convenient. So if you get it and it's not convenient, make sure you call in advance as early as possible to change that. If it is there, again, just like with the phone interview potentially for applying, make sure you have minutes if it's a minutes phone, and make sure you answer all of their questions. They sometimes call early, they sometimes call late, so be ready and available. And if there's something that you don't know when they ask, make sure you follow up with them and provide them that information. Once they have everything, they'll process it, and they'll see if you can also be approved on a non-medical basis for SSI. Once you have, if you do so, then you will get information about how much your monthly payment will be, as well as Medicaid information too.
So unfortunately, my experience across the United States has been that it's taking at least a year for a claims examiner to be assigned to looking at the initial application. And that's just the assignment. It can take a month or more for them to make a decision. If it's not favorable, then you've got 60 days to file a request for reconsideration. It goes back to DDS. That can take 8 months to even 10 months. And then if that gets denied, I'm seeing it's taking 5 months to 8 months to get a hearing in front of a judge. So again, none of us like these time frames, but you need to be patient and persistent in the course of filing a claim and proceeding on that claim. So Amy, what's the difference in proof from an SSDI claim and an SSI claim?
Yeah, great question. So for SSDI, as we talked a little bit about at the beginning, you have to be fully insured. So you have to have paid through your employment money into Social Security, if you will, and have enough credits. And if a person's not sure, they can always find out their date of last insured from Social Security by calling that 1-800-772-1213 number, for instance, and finding out their date of last insurance. Essentially, that's like when your credits expire, and you have to have your health conditions. I won't go into all that, but I'll say for SSDI, you have to be fully insured. And for SSI, you don't have any type of, you can have never worked or not have enough credits for SSI. So that'd be the main difference for proof.
Yeah, the way I explain it is for SSDI, you have to be in an insured status, and for SSI, you have to meet certain asset, income, and resource limitations. So I think that's an easy way to understand the difference. And of course, now the million-dollar question is, how are those SSI benefits calculated?
Yeah, it's so important. So SSI has a set rate that generally for the cost of living each year has an adjustment. And so for 2024 this year, it's $943 a month for an individual and $1,415 for a couple. And then SSA says for the cost of living adjustment starting in January 2025, it'll be $967 per month for an individual and $1,450 per month for a couple. However, the amount may be lower based on the income, certain family members' income, your living situation, other factors. And I see those things regularly. And so I just want to kind of make sure people know that, because sometimes I think going in, and if they feel hope and assume they're going to win, they sort of calculate that full amount, and that may or may not be the case. So they have to understand that SSA looks at specific things. They count specific things that may or may not be looked at as income and resources and things, and they all have definitions. So that number could go down, unfortunately, depending upon their calculations. And that's part of their SSA interview for the non-medical basis, and that's what they're looking at to determine how much that amount will be for the individual or couple.
So then how is that different from SSDI in terms of the amount of benefits?
Yeah, so SSDI is that person's paid money into the system, and depending upon how much money they paid in, depending upon how long it's been, is reflective of how much they'll get back. It's kind of like that person, if they're found disabled at one of the stages and being approved, it's kind of like taking their retirement out early, if you will. So it's not a set rate like SSI, and it depends on how much they've worked and how much money they've paid into the system. And if they haven't been reviewed and they continue receiving SSDI, then it will just go into like their full retirement. So it sort of rolls over, if you will. But the cases can be reviewed, more common for younger people, 49 and under, and sometimes people that are a little bit older. It's a little more rare as they get to like a little high, like 62 or such, especially in your early retirement ages and things. But it's still something to keep being aware of, because if the case has been reviewed, then they could see if that person may still meet the definition of disability or not.
So as an aside, I will have clients who are struggling financially. We've applied for SSDI, and then they want to apply for early retirement. And what I say to these clients is, look, for the period of time from you stop working until the time you decide to collect your early retirement, we're going after your full Social Security benefits based on your earnings record. But when you take that early retirement, you're probably going to get a reduction of about 25% of your Social Security benefits over your lifetime. So I understand you need the money financially, but now from the time you start collecting your Social Security retirement forward, what we're after is the difference between what you would get in SSD benefits and those early retirement benefits. So we can go after both. It's just obviously those benefits, SSD benefits, after you are collecting early retirement, are going to be small because they're going to be the difference between those two numbers. And you can find out what those numbers are by checking your account at www.ssa.gov.
Exactly.
So, Amy, I'm always asked this. Do I get medical benefits if I'm awarded SSI, and what am I eligible for?
Yeah, in most states, an SSI recipient will automatically get Medicaid. So that's a huge deal, especially if you don't have health insurance. You may not be able to get medical treatment. And so if approved for SSI, medically and non-medically, to be able to get Medicaid is a really important and wonderful thing. So, yeah.
So one of the things that clients will always ask me, well, if I get SSI, do I get any retroactive benefits? The answer to that is no. But you automatically get your Medicaid benefits if you live in the right state.
Yes, automatically.
Yeah. So what's the difference between medical benefits if you're awarded SSDI? How does that work?
Yeah, for SSDI, it's not Medicaid, it'd be Medicare. And it's after a wait period. It's a 2-year wait period, but I want to scare people because there's some really good things that can potentially go with that, with your past due benefit and such, but I don't want to confuse people and go over all that. But I'll just say for SSDI, it's Medicare. And that information, if the person is approved, it'll in your notice of award letter, it'll explain that. And then they'll follow up with the Center for Medicare and Medicaid and get all that information. So it's wonderful too. Mm-hmm.
So basically, there's a 5-month waiting period. So if you're found to be disabled January 1st of 2024, you would not get benefits for January, February, March, April, May, and your benefits would start June.
Exactly.
For Medicare purposes, you have to do that 5-month waiting period and then collect benefits for 24 months. So in essence, there's a 29-month period of time where you would not have medical coverage. And of course, if you can get on your spouse or significant other's group insurance, that's important. Or go out into the open market to get some insurance, because there will be this gap of coverage just built into the Social Security system.
Exactly. And sometimes, as you're saying, like those cases at initial level and or at reconsideration level and even a hearing level can take so long. One of the positives is while waiting for that, sometimes they've waited all that time that once approved, they've passed that 2-year wait period for Medicare, which I have happened a lot. Yeah. So you win the case if it is approved and the person is already eligible for Medicare because they passed that wait period. So it's exciting. They might not even know it's happened, but that's one of the positives of while they're waiting. And so it could be positive in that way that they've not only accrued more money for a potential past due benefit, but they also get Medicare for SSDI. So it's one of the good things of having it take a while sometimes.
And one of the things that folks need to understand is that once the claim has been decided, Social Security isn't going to speak to us about the amount of the back benefits. They're not going to deal with us about Medicare issues. You're actually going to have to deal with that on your own. And I know that's a pain in the rear end, but they don't want to talk to us lawyers or representatives after that point. Got it? Okay, let's take a break and we will be coming back and talking about, can you work while you're getting SSI?